Welcome back to another episode of the Chips and Chops podcast. I would like to first shout out our sponsor, Stockroom East. Stockroom East is an amazing collaborative workspace here in South Bend, Indiana. Click the link in the description if you want to hear more about them. Today we have a very important member of the South Bend community, the principal of John Adams High School, Mr. James Seitz. Mr. Seitz has called South Bend his home his entire life. Mr. Seitz left South Bend briefly after graduating from John Adams High School to attend college on a basketball scholarship, but found he missed his family and returned to attend IU South Bend. Still passionate about basketball, Seitz decided to major in math education so he could teach and coach high school students. Taking upper-level math courses at IU South Bend, he found the coursework challenging but worth the effort. After graduating from IUSB, Seitz taught math and coached basketball at Washington High School for 8 years before earning his master's in educational leadership. He then served as an assistant principal at Riley High School for 1 year before becoming the principal at his high school, alma mater, John Adams High School, in 2014. So, David and I, just anecdotally, we've been going to Adams since 2019, right? We're seniors, and, we thought, why not get the man who plays a big part in our amazing time at Adams? So, Mr. Seitz, growing up, everyone had a dream job. I wanted to be a firefighter. David wanted to be a policeman. What did you want to be when you were a kid?
Well, first of all, thank you for the introduction. That's you guys did your research.
Yep.
And definitely been around a little while, and excited to have be the principal at Adams, at a school that meant so much to me as a student, and so now I can give back into the community that helped raise me.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, as a young 9-10-year-old, I wanted to play in the NBA. That was my goal. I was going to play in the NBA.
Everyone's had that dream at least once in their life. Professional athletes. Yeah.
Yep. And then probably about freshman, sophomore year, when you're still on the freshman team and then on the JV team, you realize you're probably not going to play in the NBA. And so I actually took a cadet teaching class in high school, which we now have education professions, similar class, and was able to basically observe classes. And this was actually at the elementary level, observe elementary level classes, and really liked being involved in education. And so liked math, knew that I wanted to coach after I got done playing, whenever that may be. And so really it's, besides the MBA, since after that it was to be an educator.
That's awesome. So you lived in South Bend your whole life, but then after high school you briefly left to play college basketball. You had a scholarship. A lot of young hoopers dream of playing college basketball or even the NBA. You got there and decided to leave. How did that happen?
It's interesting. So small-time basketball, especially at the lower levels, is you've got fewer people in the stands than your high school. Your high school games are bigger than your NAI and division.
Yeah, especially
games.
Adams, for example. Adams is huge.
Yeah, so you got a packed house every night. You're traveling a lot more because you're not playing teams in town. You're going all over the place. And I also saw it as an opportunity. I actually got into coaching then. So I spent a year at Tri-State, which is now Trine, and then was able actually to come back and be a volunteer assistant freshman coach at Adams while continuing with my education.
No, that's awesome. So then, you mean during your high school time, were you kind of the superstar of the Adams basketball team? Or?
Not at all.
Not at all?
No, I played defense, and I played a lot of defense.
It was enough to get you a college scholarship, though. A lot of kids don't get that, and they're at the talent.
Well, and it's interesting, though, because I'm a firm believer that there's so many colleges, and that if you have the grades and you are a starter on a high school basketball team in the state of Indiana, that you can go play somewhere. Now, the problem is a lot of kids don't have the grades.
Yeah.
And they don't have the other attributes of being a good teammate, things that college coaches really look for.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So looking back at high school, even John Adams 20 or so years ago, what would you say have been the biggest changes?
The building itself has been a huge change. We had the building was roughly, I'd say, 2/3 of the size that it is now. So the library, the auditorium, none of that was there. We had, when I was a student, about 1,200 students.
Wow.
And now we're just under 2,000. So just the amount of people has changed. But really, the core values that were there, the building positive relationships with people, putting the education first, that's still the same.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It also seems like back when you were in high school, it might have been Clay that had the most students, right? Or I don't know if LaSalle High School is around back then, but I mean nowadays it's Adams who has 500 or so more students than every other school.
Yeah, it was interesting because you had back then they were all neighborhood schools. There was no open enrollment. There were no magnets. So you went where you lived, and so wherever the population density was where the most kids were at school.
Did you like that? You know, all your neighbors all went to the same school as you, or did you think like having all the different neighborhoods coming together in different areas is better?
It's a tough situation. I definitely liked that.
Yeah.
The way that it was, but with the current structure of education in the state of Indiana right now, so Indiana has open enrollment. So if you go live in South Bend, you can go to school in Evansville. Now, no one would do that. That's 5 hours away, but in theory, you could do that. And so as long as the state of Indiana has open enrollment, you know, South Bend is going to need to continue to have open enrollment because we have to really take a look at.
They have to follow the state?
We don't have to follow state. We could say no, but then you risk students who don't live in, let's say, the Adams district. They could then go to other schools.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How would you say the culture has changed in the last 20 years?
The cell phone was invented, social media.
Yeah.
You know, I guess I think back and I'm glad that we didn't have social media. I don't know if I would have gotten in more trouble or not. But, you know, it's brought a different element to just being a teenager. I say all the time, I think being a teenager now is harder than what it ever was, especially if you're having a tough time. There's so much out there in terms of, just with all the different TikToks and all the different social media stuff that you guys.
And I feel like it's going to keep evolving. It could keep getting worse. I don't know if there's ever a stopping when it's like not worse, but like harder to live as a teenager. I don't know. I feel like.
Yeah, and I agree. It's everyone gets big and bad behind a computer or I guess your phone, right?
Yeah.
And then you can post something anonymously about someone that may or may not be true, but it doesn't matter if it's true or not because it's out there and it's on the internet, so it must be true, right?
And some people will believe it, and it doesn't matter if it's true or not because
yeah, for happens. Sure. Also, kind of looking at social media. I mean, if you're one of the kids who doesn't stereotypically fit in or whatever, and you're scrolling on social media, you're gonna compare yourself to your peers, and you're gonna feel down about yourself. Yeah, and I mean, like at this point, you're kind of I don't know how to say this. You're kind of behind if you don't have social media, right? That would make you not fit in nowadays.
Do you wish the technology though, like computers and whatnot, the advancements in that was around for studying wise or whatnot?
Yes, and in fact, I wish it's interesting because I've been out of the classroom now for 10 years, and I think back when I left the classroom to now, and how I would love to teach now with the technology that's associated with. From the smart boards to all the different, especially with math, with all the different graphing technology that's available.
And giving assignments online and whatnot, I don't know.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more simple, I guess. Yeah. Looking back at your high school days, what would you say have been what were your favorite, memories being an Eagle?
Gosh, man, I mean, all of it was fantastic. So I played soccer and basketball. Soccer, we won 3 sectional titles, won a regional, lost in the morning game of the semi-state in a shootout to Fort Wayne Homestead my junior year. They actually scored with about 10 seconds left to tie it and then beat us in a shootout.
That's sad.
It was awful. They
like those are the moments you remember forever. You don't.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember when my 7th grade basketball team lost in ICCL, and it crushed my heart.
I mean, it's the same thing as the semi-state, basically. Yeah.
You don't remember failing tests and grades, but you remember those sports moments. It's something that lives with you forever.
Yeah, Homestead. Then they won the night game 6-0. So
the next game.
Yeah, the next game to get to the state finals. So
wow.
Yeah.
So if you held with them, it means you probably could have beat them too. And
so we had some good pep assemblies. I think for me, I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but like I had really good teachers. I can go back and I can name every single teacher I had at Adams, freshman year through senior year, and I really feel that the way that they prepared me, like I feel like I'm a really good writer, and I write a lot in the job that I'm in now, and so it's a lot of the skills that I learned back then I'm using now.
Yeah, I would definitely say that's what stands out to me about Adams. I mean, I went to Holy Cross Grade School, and then coming to Adams, every single teacher I've had has left a mark in some way or another. And I can still look back at my freshman year and being like, oh my gosh, that teacher was so amazing. That's one of my favorite teachers ever, And that's,
And it's not normally the subject they teach. It's more just the life lessons that you get out of what they say in those 5 minutes before you learn book stuff or whatnot. It's just those 5-minute lessons that they give before class, and it's just like those are the ones that stick.
Yeah, and also just how they, approach you, right? If they're a teacher that,
Shows
asks you
respect.
how you're doing every single day and cares, about how you're doing outside the classroom, or they see you in the halls, they smile at you, might make you laugh. I think that's definitely the best part.
Yeah.
So would you say, like, if you could go to high school nowadays and compared to back then, would you? Or would you say back then it was definitely a lot easier and better?
Oh wow.
Because there's a lot of advantages too, because you get to hang out with your friends more, you get to communicate with your friends more, but then there's also like you can communicate too much.
Yeah, I do think that there's more opportunities for kids now these days. I mean, like, think about this opportunity that you have right now. Like, this didn't exist back then. We had some kids that, I think, like, the best thing we had was a video yearbook, and they'd go around when they had a camera. And, I mean, you can still go back and see some of them.
I'm gonna have to look.
Yeah, well, I can. There's one. It's a VHS tape. There's actually in my office right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. There's definitely more opportunities now. But I'm the type, like, I wouldn't change anything, right? So I think that the time that I was at Adams, that's the time I was meant to be. I met friends. I met great teachers, great people. It helped me get ready for the next steps in life. And so, I think I'm always going to be partial to the time that I was there.
For sure. Yeah, and then, you went and, you were a teacher and you coached at, Washington and Riley. Was that weird at first, going to your rival and helping out their teams and helping out their students?
It was very weird. But I think for me, going to those other schools was probably the best thing for me in terms of education, because you learn how other people do things, right? There's more than one right way, and there's more than one wrong way to do things. And then most importantly is that I learned that there's really good kids that need you everywhere. It's not just at Adams, it's not just at Clay or Washington. There's really good kids all over the place. And then there's also kids that need you. We as educators provide not only the reading, the writing, the arithmetic, right? We provide social well-being, counseling.
It's like a second parent. Like,
yeah.
I mean, for schools or whatnot, you're there 8 hours a day. You're at home 8 hours a day, and you're sleeping 8 hours a day. They're in your life half the time, so they're like a second parent.
Yeah, I think of the South Bend schools is it's like, while there are rivalries, there's unique things about every single school, and there's obviously unique things about every single student, except at the end of the day, we're all, from the 574 area, right? And there are peers, so it's not like, I think if I went, it would be weird at first, cheering for the Wildcats or cheering for the Panthers, but, at the end of the day, it's just like, it's really no different,
Yeah.
So you've been a principal for now 8 or 9 years. What would you say have been the biggest struggles of being a principal so far?
Or first, what made you want to be a principal? Because you went out of education to be a principal. What made you want to apply for, I don't know if you apply for those jobs or if they ask you, but apply to be a principal?
So it really came down to, I was at the time sitting down, I had about 3-4 years of teaching experience under my belt, and needed to kind of figure out what the next steps were. And so going on and getting my master's degree was kind of that next step. And so you look at, there's different options of getting that, and so I decided educational leadership. Wasn't sure what I really wanted to do with it. Quite frankly, never had ambition to be a principal. And so I was at Washington, and I had just finished up my degree, had gotten my principal's license, passed that test, so I had everything. And the assistant principal there actually took another job. And so that position opened, applied, got it. And it really happened very quickly, because I was, quite frankly, not ready to give up coaching. I always wanted to become a head basketball coach.
So you can't be a head coach and be a principal, can you?
No.
Is it time management, or is it rules?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's no rule against it, I guess, anywhere.
The time management would be too tough, especially with, family.
Yeah. I mean, at some smaller schools, they have, guys will do that. And, but it really, for me, was, just kind of that next step of wanting to impact as many students as what we can. Obviously, in your classroom, you impact the kids in your room.
Yeah.
If they're, if you're on a team, if you coach a team, you can impact those kids. But, I'm in a position now where I can impact 2,000 kids. I can impact families. I can impact adults. And so for me, that's kind of that driving force. There's obviously always struggles, right, in any position. And so, this position, you're working with students, you're working with adults. And so there's complexities to both of that.
Yeah. And
so I'm a manager of people, also an educational leader. So you're making sure that curriculum is done right. And so I don't know if there's one big challenge per se. I mean, it's because it's all a challenge. And so time management is a big piece. Being able to trust the team that you have around you, put yourself in position so that way you have good people on your team. And I truly think it is a team, and use the word team. This is not me doing everything at Adams High School. It's everybody involved.
Yeah. So what do you really do on a day-to-day basis as a principal?
I just sit in my office and eat snacks. And so a great portion of my day is going to be supervision, being out in the hallways, getting into classrooms, being in the cafeteria, interacting with you guys.
Yeah, you're always a face that I think everyone likes to see in the hallways.
For sure.
Sometimes.
But
so you're doing a lot of that, and then the meeting I was just at was with the other high school principals. We are actually working on our accreditation right now. So we have a big process that we have to go through so that we can get accredited. We have to do that every 5 to 6 years. Then we're talking about graduation rates and different strategies that we're using there. So a lot of it is meeting with people, putting them in the right places. And then I tend to get a little bit deeper into things like graduation, kind of those big ticket items that, that's what everyone pays attention to, right? How many kids are graduating?
How many kids are graduating?
So that's going to be important. Plus, that's our goal, right? Our goal is to get you guys across the finish line, to get you graduating. So that's really, my day's different every day. I can spend, all day in meetings, which I try not to, or I can spend, all days in classrooms in the hallways.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been a principal now for 8 years. Would you say you've had any moments where you've had any second thoughts? Because at the end of the day,
why am I a principal?
Yeah, you have a really big job. It's really important. So have you ever had any second thoughts?
Always. And I shouldn't say second thoughts, but there are definitely days that you go home and you're like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah.
Especially early. I can remember I was 29 years old when I got the job.
Oh, wow.
First time. I was 29 and became assistant principal. I was 31 and became principal.
That's such a young age to have that much that's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. That's only 13 years older than we are. That's weird to think about.
Yeah. So, I was young, and I have this job, and you're taking over the biggest high school in the district, and there were some issues that we had to get fixed to get Adams kind of back where it needed to be. And there were some growing pains, and you go home at night and you're just like, what are we doing? And I think though, what keeps you going each day are coming back and knowing that the kids need you, the teachers need you, and they do, because if I don't show up, then who else is gonna?
Yeah. Do you get sick? Do you get sick days?
Yeah.
No. Okay.
Okay. Less than others. Yeah, and then everyone knows you have a big family. I can imagine that's hard to balance. I don't know how many kids you have. Is it 6 now? 6. 6. So balancing having 6 kids, and then you go to school and there's 2,000 kids, right? Yeah. So
school's easier than home.
Yeah. But I can still imagine. You're talking about long days. That's kind of 2 full-time jobs, right?
Yeah, it is, but it's those are the things I've talked with you two about coaching, and so those are kind of the fun things, right? And so those when you're having a bad day, when you're having a long day, those can kind of get you through the day of, hey, now I get to go coach after this, or I get to spend this time with the family. And the other thing too, as the kids get older, they really just become a fabric of the school. You guys have seen me at events. They come and they just
that's what I was gonna say is is that a way that you do to have that connection with your kids, because you have to go to the games, might as well bring 2-3 of them with you.
Yep. Yeah, and they love it.
And then the other ones have to stay home, or do you make cuts okay, you 3, your basketball season, you 3, football season, or is it kind of wants to go?
Whoever wants to go goes, and most of the time somebody's involved in something else.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
They're probably, if they're not there that night, they're probably at something. So
another event.
Tonight you'll see a couple kids at the girls' game with me, and the other ones had something going on.
Yeah, and then in a couple of years, maybe they'll be playing in that game.
Yeah,
right? Which is really interesting.
Starting
to think
next year, we'll have a freshman. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
no, I
great.
knew he had one in 8th grade because it's the same year as Johnston's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you say have been some of your favorite moments of being a principal so far?
Oh gosh, this podcast would be up there.
Have you ever done any sort of interview, like a long form interview? Or
I did a podcast during the pandemic for Redeemer Radio.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I did that. That was fun.
Was that like you're on a Zoom call doing one, or was it in person?
No, we did that over the phone, and he just recorded it over the phone.
That's interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was during the pandemic. I can remember because all the kids were home, so you could hear my kids in the background.
Yeah.
One had a whistle they were blowing. It was funny. I don't know if I've done any other real ones like this. So no, this is good.
Yeah, that's
This is
interesting.
good.
So like looking at the last 8 years, have there been any like of your favorite days that you look back on as being a principal? Or I can imagine graduation day is always a highlight.
Yeah, graduation's awesome. It's such a nice event. It's a big event with everybody's in a good mood. The parents are excited, the kids are excited. So graduation's always up there. Obviously, the Friday nights with the basketball games and the football games, those are fun. You have a homecoming, or you have a big city rival, and you pull out the win. And just the day-to-day of being involved, being with kids. If you have a situation where you get a kid to graduate that really they didn't think that or their parents didn't think that they were going to get there, those are always the fun parts of the job.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's, obviously the sectional wins and things like that, those would be at the top of the list. Those are fun. When you get to go see, going and watching our choir is one of the fun things that I enjoy doing. We have a wonderful choir. Our band, our orchestra.
Did you play any instruments back in the?
No, I can't play chopsticks on the piano. And so I think for me, things that I can't do, I'm always very amazed at people that can do them. And so, those are things that I like to go.
And
see.
I'm sure there's people that like look at you and it's like, I can't do that. Like, that's so cool that you can do that.
Well, I was just talking about, you're going to the choir concerts. I think my favorite thing about Adams is it's not a super like cliquey school, right? There's something for everyone. There's a community for everyone. I definitely think that's my favorite part.
Yeah.
So like, what do you think you look forward to most on a daily basis?
Well, it's so every morning I get up and come into school, drop my stuff in the office and go to door 6 or door 20, depending. I kind of started to rotate back and forth between the two, and then really just greeting students,
greeting kids,
and then walking through the school. Those first kind of half hour is just kind of getting making sure everything's in place, making sure everybody's where they need to be. And then really it's different each day. So I also look too like at the different challenges that we have, and so how can you attack those? And so when you look at things like a graduation rate or testing scores, and how can we work with our team to have innovative ways to get kids to increase test scores or get kids to graduate. And so those are things too every day that I look forward to.
Yeah, that's awesome. It seems like you found like your primary purpose in life.
I think so. Yeah.
Right, that's kind of awesome. So I think that's what everyone's looking for.
Yeah.
Just a question that I have. Looking back to when you were in high school, would you say like city rivalries are still as big of a deal? I feel like, do you think they still are?
Yeah, I think so. I think when we were in high school, big rivalry with St. Joe. And again, especially because a lot of the kids live in the same neighborhood, and you would.
Yeah, especially back then, a lot of those St. Joe kids would live in Adams District.
Yeah, and so you were friends with them, you grew up with them, and then you'd play against them in soccer, football, basketball, whatever it would be. And then the city games are always a big deal. The Riley Adams was always huge. Really, all the city games it was gonna be a big rivalry.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, I think, looking at the St. Joe game, I look forward to that. I always have that marked on my calendar because, a lot of my friends go to St. Joe, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really awesome. Outside of being a principal, you're really passionate about coaching. When would you say that you've developed that passion?
When I realized I wasn't going to make it to the NBA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you think, I mean, like, that's 15, 16 years old, right?
Yeah. No, I've always had, I've always enjoyed kind of that side of athletics and breaking down film or diagramming plays or
finding weaknesses and attacking those.
Yeah, and kind of that development.
Yeah. So how long?
It's kind of like school, for example. I mean, it's the same. You're coaching how to increase test scores. You look at the weaknesses, why the test scores are weak, and you attack those weaknesses, build them up, and your team, your students will do better.
Exactly.
Yeah, you can definitely compare sports to a lot in life, right? And I guess school is one of those.
Yep.
So yeah, how long have you been coaching now then for?
Oh, gosh.
Since you had kids?
Well, yeah, but even before that. So because I
Washington.
started like as a volunteer assistant at Adams when I was 20 years old. So in some respects, 20 years I've been coaching.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, David's been coaching for, is it your second year now?
Yeah, second year.
Yeah. So I mean, maybe one day you'll be a principal, David, right?
Maybe.
There you go.
No, yeah. I mean, I volunteer coach right now for a 5th grade team. Yeah, I mean, it's a ton of fun, and like just like connecting with the kids, right?
Yeah, I practice right after this. I have to go.
Yeah, I mean, like it's kind of funny, seeing 5th graders interact with each other, and I mean, at that age, I mean, they're just, yeah.
Like I wonder if that's how I was. If that's how the coaches looked at me, and it's like, wow, like what is he doing? Like why is he saying that?
Or like how they look at you, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like you think of yourself. I mean, you're a senior in high school. You don't think of yourself as that old or whatever, but they look at you, and you're 10 years older than them or something. That's kind of incredible. Yeah. So I mean, looking at like coaching and everything, what would you say have been your favorite moments of that so far?
Coaching my kids.
Coaching your kids?
Yeah, it's coaching high school basketball is awesome. The competitiveness, you're never gonna have the competitiveness of a high school basketball game at a 7th, 8th grade game. You just aren't. You're also not gonna have.
I think the kids are gonna disagree.
Well,
the kids think it's I mean, me for example, I thought my 7th grade game was like I was playing in college. Like
it was the NBA championship.
Yeah, every game, even like pickup was like NBA championship at that age.
All right. Well, then I'll say you're not going to get the environment.
Okay.
On Friday
Yeah.
night. Let's say that, right? But I certainly think that coaching your kids and spending time with them in that way, and then seeing their growth individually that's been my greatest.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, a funny story is me and David kind of met through playing against each other in the ICCL. I mean, I know you remember me.
I remember him. He doesn't remember me. I remember him because he was my like least favorite player in ICCL.
He still is your least favorite, right?
Yeah. But no, like I always like Holy Cross. Like he's there, and it just.
The funny thing is, I would have
aggravating.
The funny thing is, I would have never guarded you.
Yeah.
I would have never guarded you.
But you were just annoying.
I don't know. I have a vivid memory of you getting a technical against us, and like thinking that you were annoying. Yeah, and then looking, I mean, that's just crazy to think about that. When we were in 5th grade, we were playing against each other. You hated me, but then we go to Adams and we become good friends.
Yeah.
Right. So
Adams brings people together.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, like, so you've been a principal at Adams for 8 years now. I mean, what would you say? Why are you so passionate about staying in the South Bend area and staying at Adams?
Well, it's my school. It's a school I graduated from. It's a school that my kids. I have a daughter who graduated a couple years ago, and then have more kids now coming. And so my passion is for the city of South Bend. I love the city of South Bend. There's a lot of great things going on. It obviously gets there's a lot of negative attitudes towards South Bend and towards South Bend schools, but there's a lot of really good things going on. And so I want to make it a place for my own kids where they can go to school and flourish, and then also just the cities of the residents of South Bend. If you have good, strong schools, that's what's going to build good, strong human beings.
Mental well-beings, yeah.
And then, the goal is to build up kids into good, positive adults, have them come back to South Bend, live, and then you have a better community.
No, yeah, that's awesome.
Because that's a thing that's really looked at, is like South Bend's looked at as like it's not as good as other cities, but deep down, like those other cities are also looking at themselves as they're not as good in other cities. Everyone just wants to leave and exit. So
yeah, well,
I don't know.
What I think is interesting in the last 10 years, you've had South Bend being talked about as one of the worst cities in America, and then fast forward to say 2023 is no longer looked at like that. So I think that's what's really awesome. Something that I am curious about is right when you left high school, at least seniors, or not seniors, but people who have graduated from Adams now, it seems like they really look at, high school in a different, more mature perspective right now. Things right now are a really big deal to us, and we might stress about things that when you graduate, you realize, it's really not that big of a deal. So what lessons would you say that you learned when you graduated compared to your high school days?
Well,
like, do you look at like how the kids interact or what's such a big deal now and kind of look at that as like, oh, that's kind of funny, that's kind of...
Oh, yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think...
Well, phones, for example, you probably like, why are they on their phones so much?
But also just like petty arguments or things that students might care a lot about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you get older too, things that were cool or not cool, they don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what if I could get kids to understand, more kids to understand that, your grades and your behavior and how you're going to then use that in life are far more important than anything else that you're doing.
Because that carries on with you. The stuff you wear, the stuff you do, like that stuff changes as your life changes. Everyone else changes, but your grades and stuff that is permanent.
Right. If you're 40 years old and still acting immature in the way that you were in high school, then what do you have to show for it? And so it's amazing, you look back and you have some of the kids that were, the cool kids or whatever, and their life isn't very good. And so, they had a great 4-year run.
Yeah.
But gosh, the real world will hit you.
Yeah, that's something I'm kind of curious about is like, say if I still live in South Bend in 20 years, if there's a Adams reunion, I mean...
Do those happen?
They do. So ours actually, we were supposed to have it got canceled in COVID. That was 2021. We canceled that. So
those happen at Adams?
No.
Because I've just like never heard of them. I thought they were just kind of like a movie.
That's
like
what I thought
movie
too.
thing. Like
they have them. They're off-site. I get invited to some of the other ones, especially now as some classes get older. But yeah, they do every your 10th, then your 15th, 20, 25. 25 is a big one. And then a lot of them will go all the way till 50.
That'd be kind of cool. Like you go to the school that all your classmates went to, and you're like, yeah, I'm in charge of it now.
Yeah, I think it'd be super interesting to see where your peers are at or where your close friends in high school are at in 20, 25 years. But I can also imagine in 20, 25 years, it's really not that big of a deal to you. It's not that big of a deal anymore, right? So I mean, my parents don't go to their high school reunions. I guess they don't care enough to see where the popular kids ended up, right? I guess at that point it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Yeah, I mean I think that's so funny. So Mr. Seitz, what would you say is like your dream with Adams? Like, obviously, I mean your goals will change, even day to day or month to month or year to year. But like, if there's like one big thing that you really want to achieve, what would that be?
Well, it's to continue to graduate as many kids as what we can. I think if you're talking kind of about awards and things like that, there's a national blue ribbon award that the school like Swanson was able to achieve. And so
Christ the King got one a couple years ago.
And so there's different things that you kind of have to jump through for that, and those are nice. But it sounds cliche, but it's really just continue to develop good young people, and I think we have to take a look because. Education's evolving and changing just like everything else, but you still need the education, right?
Yeah.
And so, this right here is an example of a different piece of education. You're doing this for a class.
Yep.
And so this is a different piece of education that didn't exist 20 years ago. So 20 years from now, what does education evolve with? And so, when you talk about kind of vision we have to get more kids involved with our career and technical education classes. We have to get more kids involved with our IB program, our magnets, because really those are the skills that you're learning.
That's what I think. Yeah, that's something that really needs to be pushed. Is because I feel like the core classes kind of stay the same, no? Mm-hmm. But like the developments in new classes and new like CTE and whatnot, those are opportunities that weren't there.
Oh, yeah, just looking at the morning program that Dave and I have the opportunity to be a part of, it's really helps with public speaking. I think that's something that could be pushed a little bit more to it's an incredibly
we're meeting with like people older than us every day and being taught by different people every day, and it's kind of just it's different.
Or even with the podcast, we have to meet people who we've never met before, and you kind of have to know how to talk to them for the first time.
Yeah, you're like a rare guest that we like actually know previously.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the last 22 episodes, we've known including you, I think 3 of our guests before the podcast, right? So I mean, usually it's just messaging them on some sort of social media and having them come. But I mean, always that that first interaction can be a little bit awkward because usually you just run into somebody and then that's how you meet them, right? But it's really different. So Mr. Seitz, we had some students submit some questions just about 3.
Yeah, no, we posted something on Instagram. I don't know if you saw it or not.
Yeah, I'm definitely not gonna ask all of these.
Okay.
If I can't answer it, I won't.
Yeah. So someone asked, how does he do it? So I mean, that's a pretty baseline question. I don't know how you'd answer that, but how do you do it, Mr. Seitz?
I married well. That's the number one thing, guys. You have to marry well, find a good spouse. No, but it's that certainly is an important piece because you have to balance that work and your personal life, right? And with what I do, they kind of mesh together as I described earlier. So it's kind of finding that happy medium, that balance between both. And then I think I've also become accustomed to knowing that I'm not going to get everything done. If you walked into my office right now, the conference room has stuff all over it because it's just I'm always working on different things.
Yeah. So the second question is from Tommy. He was a foreign exchange student last year, Tommaso. He said, what is the biggest mistake of your career?
Oh.
I mean, it sounds like earlier you kind of talked about how you live with no regrets. So I'm sure there's things that you wish that you did differently, but turns you into the principal and the person that you are now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you always learn from mistakes. So again, I don't know if I would change anything because you learned the right way or wrong way to do something, whether it's an interaction with a parent or whether it's the way that we implemented a new program. So I don't know if I have an answer for that one.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And then our last question is, what is your least favorite thing about being the principal?
Let's just say they were very negative. I don't know why. Both least and it's kind of weird.
I'd say the discipline side of things, of having to suspend or expel a student. Those are things that you never want to have to do. But unfortunately, those are part of the job to maintain order in the environment. We have 2,000 students, over 200 adults, and so there are consequences to actions. Yeah,
for sure. I can imagine, just interacting with, kids who you see a lot of potential in and then who don't live up to that. That can be really hard. Yeah. But then there's also kids who do live up to their potential, which I can imagine would be amazing. Yeah. So I mean, Mr. Seitz, that's all that we have prepared. Is there anything that, you're curious about or any questions that you have or anything that you'd like to talk about?
So what's your guys' goal with this? You're doing this now, you're in high school. What's kind of the goal of this?
Yeah, so
you can go.
Well, I was gonna say so we're doing this through our morning program, and at first it was a lot different, but I think it's recently turned into a lot of like a passion project, right? So I look at this, it's about 15 hours a week we spend on it. It's just an incredible amount of fun, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess my goal is really just to meet more, important members of the community.
Mine would probably be. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of kids that see high schoolers doing stuff that. I mean, we're having other adults, we're having other teenagers. It just shows that you can go out and meet with people not just in your group. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for example, when you were at Adams, I don't know how much you interacted with the Washington kids, but now Adams kids and Washington kids, there's a lot of integration due to they went to earlier school together or they just sports.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is just a representation of you can integrate with really anyone.
Yeah. I love that. I think mostly what I've talked about since the start, my mission is really just to help kids. I want, I wouldn't say kids, but people to put themselves out there. Because I came into Adams and I was a really quiet kid. I didn't talk at all. And then, through meeting David and through meeting other people, having amazing teachers, I became...
him freshman year was crazy different.
Yeah, I guess now I'm as loud, right? Maybe I'm too loud, or maybe I talk too much. But yeah, so I guess with the podcast, it's I mean, you're our 32nd guest, so I mean, each guest you can take away something and learn from, and I think that's just and
that's the same thing with everyone you meet, whether it's a good or bad thing. You might see some random person and they're doing something really bad, and you have an interaction with them, you walk away and it's I don't want to have to end up like that. Right. So it motivates you to stay on the right side, and the right side could eventually help the not right side. I don't know how to put it, but the not side that you agree is right or whatnot.
Yeah.
So
I was also gonna say, like, say if the podcast wasn't doing so well, or if people didn't listen, I would still do it just to meet people, and I think it's really fun to do in an interview style. And then like each guest, you can they have a story and you can learn something from that story. So that's what I love the most.
Good. You guys seem to enjoy it. I mean, like, you did a lot of research and
Yeah, I like.
You guys are very well prepared.
Actually, another thing that I found is for I think around 2018 on Wikipedia, you were known as Jimbo Jambo Seitz.
Man, for Wikipedia, and so now it's probably spark more people to do that, but it's like every week somebody was going out and changing it. I actually have a funny story about that. So something had happened, and I had gotten summoned from some lawyer had sent me something from Michigan. I don't remember exactly what happened, and it was addressed to Adams High School to Jimbo Seitz, and because they must have gone on Wikipedia and saw that, and so some kids had some fun with that over the years.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that was their full-time job, right? Trying to mess with Mr. Seitz on Wikipedia.
Yes.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
So I mean, thank you guys so much for listening to another episode. Check us out on all platforms. It's simple. It's just Chips and Chops Podcast. All right, peace.